Welcome again to Wickerson, or Michael at Wickerson Studios. Basically, going to go in and try and figure out a little farther than the maths, even though I held out on the statistics and jumping too much into the random and statistics and deeper into the trig, which is, definitely possible. Let's take a look at the data, because data might get in the text, I doubt it, and vectors are really two things that you want to get a handle on. So if we look at data and we look at this first filter and we say item from index, how are we going to activate that? Well, let's just think about that for a second. It needs a list. Well, probably the best way to get a list of something would just start numerically, but possibly we can actually visualize it through the simplest means possible. This is pretty old hat stuff. Let's just go in, and I'm sure within here there's a range from something, range from limits. Let's just default to 0 to 1. Let's put it in there. And there we go. We get a number, default 10. In steps, we're going from 0 to 1. We're going to move it in the X direction. And with that list, since we're just playing with lists, let's just start with that. Let's take that list and put it in here. And with that, we've got an item index, pretty simple, or an index. So let's go in and grab ourselves probably in data, let's grab a list. Let's just get that one activated, list length, which will tell us basically what we want. And you can run this back through in some way to actually make it parametric so you don't have to guess at it. I'll show you a couple of different ways for not beginners, but people, trying to get used to visualizing these nodes. One thing I did do was I turned on dark mode and show names. That's why you're seeing these names at the top. And let's just think here a second. Panels are always key to keep lying around. They seem to be huge, and then you gotta shrink them down. So I kind of like to do that. Just make a smaller one. That I don't need to see everything, and so 11 is the number we want to go into the index, and we also want to see what's coming out of the list, which is the point that's actually number 11 point 000, because it's defaulting to this. Now you could go in and you could say, well, give me a number slider, and I'm going to want to deal with integers, between integers, and I'm going to want to deal with between 0 and 10. So this is pretty much old hat stuff, but it's not very parametric in a sense that I can go from one point to the next. And the other thing is I might want to visualize a point while I go, and I think that snaps in there. That's a really nice technique. So I'm going to put that in there and make that go blue. When I'm not touching it, actually maybe I will make it go orange when I'm not touching it, and there it is. Number 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So that's nice. 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So the counts, even though it says 10, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. So I'm getting 11 with that and getting 1 with 0. So you can fudge that around a little bit, but I think what's better is to produce a series, which would be nice, series. And hopefully I can make a series. I haven't even checked into that yet. Let's do a range from steps. That's kind of interesting. The amount of steps, 10. And the series is going to, step size is going to be defaulting to 1. It's starting at 0. What is my output? Because this is all new, and it's very early morning and I'm not thinking so great. So let's take a look at what we have in the panel. And you've got 0 through 9, 10, 11. There's kind of more than you need. And then I still want to end up choosing one of those items. So if you're choosing the number, you're going to end up choosing the index. So getting this in here and being able to have a play off of that is kind of irrelevant to keep wrapping it through this. So I'm just gonna default to that, and go from there to there and use my number to drive that. So I've got my list item, and I'm activating the item from index. There's many ways to do this. You don't have to overthink it too much. I'm going to take one thing you can't do is you can't just grab everything and hit like enable off, because it just enables this one off, which is kind of smart actually. So if you disable the initial thing, you're not going to end up using the node afterwards. So let's go back into data and see what we have next. Now meta from English from list is interesting, because if we have a list, let's say it was just this first list of points, and we put it in there, and we want to know the meta on each one of those items, what it would be. Well, there is no meta, and meta is like more complex ways of scripting and writing things. So you've got to get into the meta tab to start to figure that out. There's nothing there right now. This defaults to true. The item index I could put in here is the list, and you're still going to see I get no output, just like not even a null, just nothing come out as meta, because there's no meta, so it's showing no meta. So I guess that's the output, none. So let's just leave that for a while till we can get down the meta if we make it there. Tree topology is something else, but we're not dealing with a tree right now, so I'm not even going to bother with it. I'm going to jump back in here and go list from index. Lift from index is the one I just did. What am I doing? Item from index, and then I want list from index. That's exactly what I want, but I need a tree to do that. So if we take these points and we do the old way of throwing it through a range in Y as well, and we graft one of these, you're going to see then I have a tree data that's coming out, which will start to play off of differently what I was doing up here. So now I have a tree that's being selected instead of an actual branch. So nice visualization. And I can take that tree, come down here, and I think what I'm going to do is take this one to disable, so it's not doing anything. I'm looking at that tree. The index now is how many branches are in this tree. And you get 0 through 10, so you've got 11, so that'll be 11 branches, but I might want to actually use a node in tree length, which is interesting. Let's take the tree and see the number, which is, well, the total is 121 in the numbers, so let's grab that one just to keep playing with this and wrapping our heads around it and see where it's ending up going. Don't have to overthink it too much. What else do I have? Tree statistics, which is nice. Let's go in there and grab the tree statistics, and now I'll get, if I stretch this down and we skip that one and we go into tree 21 and we have the values, which will come up. Maybe it's best that I keep that one small. Keep that to the number because it's in that one. This is more of the more information on speed. I do not want that. I want my params panel tool. It's funny how you memorize locations and then you make the same mistake. Let's take our values, and there they are. 121 for the values. We have 0 nulls in that list, and we have how many metas? None. So that's not going to tell us anything more anyhow as tree statistics. And let's go back into data and go into trees again, see what else is coming out of the top of that. Tree topology looks pretty interesting, and those are 3 different ways to gather a lot of information. I'm just going to hover and get my 11, and that's the one I wanted. I want my list count. Those are my list paths, and those are my list lengths. So that's going to give us exactly what we need. So we will grab the first one, which is the number 11, which is what I wanted, the index, which allows me to use this index to go through the different trees. And these lists can be documented as points as well. And we could actually take a look at those as points right here. So you just kind of slowly plug through here till things become familiar. And there they are as points and where they're located. And I can slide through and pull them all out as the list, which is nice. But the list of each one, and then I can visualize what ones I'm actually talking about, and we'll take those through the orange, and there you go. I can leave that, and now you can see the list that's jumping up in this direction. A little different than the list that was jumping up in this direction. So that can work. Let's just take a look at the paths, because now you're seeing what's written that was familiar to, I think it was shifting lists or shifting paths. Shift paths, relative items was different. You're missing your elements on the end of here, but you're actually following some paths using the semicolon notation and the squiggly brackets. And then your list length, again, is 11 on each one. So starting to think about what tree statistics did and thinking about what is going to be the substitute for path mapper. Back into data, back into trees. You've got all these renumbered trees, simplified tree, trim tree, really ways of working with trees as we get into it. And we're going to move through the paths. Paths from elements is interesting. Paths from tree, that's what I will be using. And then tree sites is something you can think about, like the site of that path within the tree. I guess you kind of think of framing your head as you look at a tree and think about what section of that tree you're looking at. That's how I'm going to conceive of sites. I may be wrong and I may change my opinion about that. Let's go back into what we had. List from index, which is what drew us to that because it required a tree. List from path is nice. So now we have another tree that's coming in. It's getting a little jumbly. I can throw a relay on here. I believe they're called relay, which is nice. And you can shove one of those relays in there. I don't know if you could shove the relay in. That's what's bothering me. You can't just shove it within a tree. And some nodes jump in and some nodes don't. But the relay doesn't. There must be a shortcut for getting a relay. We've got a little relay, and we're going to relay that one down to this one and just keep going with our data. And now we have paths, and these are the paths. So couldn't we decide on what path, what does it require? An index of the list to be received, and it's requiring a path. So you've got to get in here and write a path this way. You could take all the paths, which would just give you the list of everything again, which is like, why are you bothering to do that? And it complicates the list and shifts it and puts another element on it. It makes the list, but it was nice what just happened there. Hang on a second. We go from this one, which is all the paths, and now you're able to put a path on each one of those items in each one of its paths. So you can see that there's a branch in each one, so you've rebranched it. But how would you go about making a path? Which leads me to think going into here, from paths, right from site, and then we get into site. So let's jump back over to trees and say what is being dealt with paths. And at this point, my main recommendation is to not just pick around in here. Grab anything and anything that you have open on your canvas and hit the question mark. And start to think again about where you were. You don't need the glossary, you don't need the topics. Curves we'll get to. We'll get to vectors. We'll get to all that. We've gotten through data, which is generally just looking at, actually, maybe not data. That's the one we want to get to. We're not going to look at params data, which is going to be the containers to everything, which have a little information on each one. We want to go into data, and we want to say, wait a second, what is all this stuff? And what does it do? And when does the word path come up? And this is how I actually went in here and said, okay, list from path. Where would paths take me? And I thought there was a section in here, trees. And then I was able to go in and say, okay, what's all this stuff dealing with trees? And I really like this because you had the sites, you had the paths. They're in alphabetical. They're not really in a hierarchical order. So dissecting a path is something that you might want to do. But if you find something that you want to do, then you kind of got to leave your visualization, put this on another screen, say, keep this always open like your little question mark cheat notes on Rhino. But then go back into here and say, okay, where was that tree? Was there a dissect path? There it is. What does that look like? And I can take these paths and start thinking them as elements, which is nice because now I have the visualization of, let me go back in here and grab another panel tool. This is how I figured it out, and it starts to show me the path elements 0, 0, 0. Well, I can type numbers. That's not going to be very hard to get at that data. So as I think about that, then I go back down here, dissect path, sites, trees, 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 path from elements. So then we go back over to here in data, we go to trees, and we go from paths from elements. And there's paths from trees, but now I'm able to write things like elements. So I'm going to go back to my params. I'm going to say, what happens if I want to make a path that looks like this and I want the 002 path? Could I go into here and just type like from paths, and you'll do this hard coded at the start, 002. Now that should produce a path that's reasonable, and you can go full circle. It's kind of like doing long division and then checking your answers, if that makes sense to people. So put this in here, take a look at what's coming out, because those were your elements. Now I can make the path, and then if I made that path, I'm just going to copy that so I can see the elements that made that path, kind of going full circle. And then I could take that single path, put it into here, and boom, I'm back to just that path within the tree that follows that at 2, 002. So, sorry, not that. That's the path that was listed as that. So I could go in and I could change this, but could I not make this parametric? Well, absolutely you could. You could have a slider on your third one that would slide through the paths of what you want to get to. So as we continue, we're going to take a look and we're going to find site from path. We'll probably do path from tree, which is worth doing, but of course you can't drag these things out. You can see how foolish I am. We'll go into here and we'll say, what is path from tree? What does that require? Well, that requires a tree, which makes me want to head back up to the top when I first started generating my tree. I wanted to know the path index number, which is a number, which is kind of like a number slider. So I could put that one in, and then I could access that path very easily right here by pulling it down. And of course, I'm in the wrong tool. I'm going, oh, I think I just deleted some stuff. There we go, because I selected too much. I'm going to go back over to params, going to grab my panel, and I'm going to bring out my path, and there it is. And that's the path that I want to get a hold of from the path index number, and it saves me having to script something strange in number sliders. And then that path then can go into something like this, and you can see that you can have total control, and this can become a very interesting thing. So I could take this path and feed it into here. I could take this path and feed it into here. And now, when I take a look at what's actually being output as a path 002, I think, and I know this is kind of jumbly and weird, I could start to make sure I got things right. I'm not have that go to the right one because I'm looking at the wrong. I was looking at the wrong data. We can pull this one up here, and we can slide through, and we can change not that path there, and we can change this flowing down to that path to the path that's coming out. So I'm a little bit. Oh, that one's going to drive these points, which are going to change as to who they are. And this number slider, I was thinking for sure I could find one of these panels that would give me pretty good control over all of these things. But as you can see, I've jumbled this up quite a bit, so it's time to slow down, go back to where I was, break it down, and start to see what information is being driven by each one of my number sliders as I start to use all these tools. It does get more interesting as you go. And obviously things you can manipulate with paths and trees, but I think if you've been good with list items, you're going to be very good with the organization of David Rutten's trees, and then we will take this farther into sites. And once again, you have to jump back into here, and I still make that old mistake of going over to the help menu to grab things. Here you're going to start taking a look at all tree sites, and that's going to break it down to what the tree is. And once again, I'll add in another relay. And I think this video has gone pretty long. I'll leave it at this by just taking this into the relay and this one into the tree. Then I'll pull my tree down into the sites, and we'll start a section on sites in a few more minutes, because that's 18 already, but it gets you realizing that all of that data and tree and list items are accessible to you. And of course, you're going to want to plug through the manipulation of all these wonderful sort patterns and all of these wonderful calling and what used to be dispatch, weave, and things like this. Then you're going to get into the meta after you fall through the tree sites, and you'll get into this kind of analysis inspection. Anyhow, thanks for watching. That's getting started. That's the second video on really digging into the data. I hope people enjoyed it. Michael at Wickerson Studios.